And welcome back to another episode of Locked On Chiefs. I am Chris Clark. He is Matt Derrick. Lots to talk about today. We're going to talk a little bit about the Packers game, move on to the Buffalo game, and are there going to be any changes between now and the Buffalo game today on Locked On Chiefs?
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Hey, Chiefs Kingdom. Welcome back for another episode of Locked On Chiefs, your daily podcast covering the Kansas City Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for always making Locked On Chiefs your first listen of the day. Don't forget, we're free and available on all platforms, including YouTube as well. I am Chris Clark. He is Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. Matt, how's it going today?
Not too bad, Chris. How about yourself? We don't get to do this on a Tuesday very often, so
we almost never get to talk on a Tuesday. It's always you and Ryan, and I'm talking on the crossovers. But a little bit of a schedule change this week, and so here we are. No offense, buddy, but I kind of wish I wasn't talking to you today about this specific game. Nothing against you; it's more about the game. So, just gonna put that out there.
Yeah, I know. I know more than a few folks out there are still having a little bit of a hard time getting over that one, and I get it. I understand, but at the same time, you know what? I've come out of this game reasonably more. I mean, I don't want to say more optimistic, but I'm been more of a glass half full kind of guy on this game. I mean, I still feel like that the Chiefs' problems are fixable. If this is the worst defensive performance that this team turns in, it's still going to be a really good defense. They've got to fix a couple of things and nip them in the bud, but I don't have the same gloom and doom that I feel like I'm getting on social media. I don't think it's time to panic quite yet for Chiefs fans.
I will say this, it is getting to the point of exhaustion when it comes to social media and the Chiefs. It almost feels like even if they're winning, you're getting a bunch of people just being pissed off about how they're playing. So this is a loss, and obviously that's part of it, and you got to be frustrated about it, and I get it. But I think you also have to look at it from the perspective of Andy Reid has been here, this is his 11th season now, I believe, and he's won 2 Super Bowls. I think you got to feel pretty good about that. Mahomes has been to 2 Super Bowls in 5 years as a starter. Overall, I just think that this team is headed in the right direction.
Well, and you look at where you are as the Chiefs, and certainly, even though, I mean, mathematically they don't technically have complete control of where they're going to go and what's going to happen. But it's pretty close because the Dolphins and the Ravens, one of them will lose because they're playing each other. They both have several tough games coming up. Jacksonville's already lost, and they have more tough games coming up. So amongst the division leaders, as far as you're fighting it out for the number 1 seed, not only I think will the pack come back to the Chiefs, but obviously they still control the tiebreaker over everybody. So all you really need to do is just make sure that you get into a tie for the 1 seed, and you're going to win that tiebreaker. And the Chiefs absolutely reasonably should. Now, some of my optimism comes from banking on the idea that Andy Reid is going to get things fixed, because he usually does. And he seems to think that that they're just not really that far away from fixing some things. I think maybe they're farther away than he feels like that they are. And I think Chiefs fans do. But that also comes with, the burdens of higher expectations. Chiefs fans expect more from this team. And these 2 games, this past game against the Packers and the one coming up against the Bills, are great examples, because, the Chiefs didn't have to beat Green Bay. They technically don't have to beat Buffalo. I mean, could they stumble one more time and get away with it? Possibly, probably. You don't want to, but Green Bay needed that game. They had to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. The Buffalo absolutely needs to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just once again, it just comes down to expectations and where you are. I mean, the Chiefs' expectations are just higher on them than they are for everybody else.
Well, and you start looking at the game and you start looking at what Kansas City needs. You're absolutely right, playoff-wise. Baltimore faces, I think, the 49ers and the Miami Dolphins. The Dolphins play the Ravens. So there's going to be some probably knocking out each other a little bit there. One of them's probably going to lose unless they both tie, which I'm curious how that would turn out with the number 1 seed. But we'll get into that if we have to later on. But looking back at this game, there are a couple of things that I want to ask you about. We looked at, we talked about the wide receiver position with Ryan on Tuesday's show, talking about, what he saw when he was there at the game. But what I want to ask about is, Wanya Morris came in and played, and I thought he played pretty well. I think you got to feel pretty good about him overall. What do you think about him maybe starting going forward, whether or not Donovan Smith is able to play?
Yeah, it's a good question because he's Donovan Smith has been trying to play through a couple of things. He dinged up a shoulder area cut a few weeks ago, and then he's also had a stinger or two in the last couple of weeks on top of that have slowed him down. And so, I mean, the guys on the team will tell you that he's really been playing through a lot and playing through some pain. And as Andy Reid described it, that they just kind of wanted to shut him down and let him heal up and everything. So. I think there's a decent chance that Wanya Morris does start this week. I mean, I think the Chiefs saw enough that they feel comfortable that he could play there. Obviously, Lucas Niang is also a possibility, but I really get the sense that they want to lock those two guys up on left side, right side. We'll see what Niang's future is, but Wanya, I mean, they view him as a potential left tackle of the future, and I think they would like to see what they can get there. Wanya's got some work to do. They will need to help him out and shade some protection that way, especially in the pass game. But I think you saw enough from Wanya in that game, in that atmosphere and environment, to feel good and want to get some more work for him.
He's a mauler. That's one thing I will say.
Oh, yeah.
He could be a road grader, and I think that's something that they don't really have in Donovan Smith. It's going to be interesting to see what they do there, because I think you're right. If they want to get him healed up, and I'm talking about Donovan Smith, the only way to do that is to give him time off. And not playing in the game isn't going to be enough. It's probably giving him a game, maybe two, to recuperate. And at that time, is he going to get his job back? We'll have to see. But I do think that they maybe move to Wanya for this coming game, and I'd be curious to see that. But then you start looking at the wide receiver position, and you look at a guy like Justin Watson, who's out there for 40 snaps during the game, but doesn't get targeted a single time. You have MVS that got targeted 5 times, had 2 catches. A lot of people asking questions about those guys.
Yeah, and some of it makes sense. I mean, certainly Rashee Rice getting a lot of targets and getting in his snaps makes sense. I mean, the Chiefs do want to get him. The Chiefs want him to be the receiver who gets the most snaps the rest of the way and the most targets the rest of the way. And he's definitely got the biggest upside, even for this year. I think you got to bank on that. And, we've talked about it. That next group, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, there will probably be some flexing up and down as far as their snaps go. MVS was down last week. I wouldn't surprise me if he was up and Sky Moore was down, 1 week to the next. Watson is probably going to be the one consistent amongst those 3 starters, because he's what they call their complementary receiver. I mean, he's the guy that they trust the most to run the correct routes, to run them perfectly, to be in the right spot, and really be the guy that helps free up other guys. I mean, I probably the best way I could describe Justin Watson would be to think of him as the modern day Albert Wilson. A little bit different size and a little bit different, characters, but Justin Watson's going to do everything right. And the idea is that if he's in the right place and he's taking coverage in one direction, that it's going to help free up somebody else. So he's not going to be the guy that's going to get a ton of targets, and he's got enough speed that he can, be the occasional deep threat. He will get some work some weeks. It's just, he's never going to, the 11 targets he got a couple of weeks ago were out of character for both him and for the Chiefs. So I don't think that's to be expected, but hey, is he going to be a guy that's, going to have 0 targets 1 week and maybe 3 the next? Yeah. Now the question to me is really just how much more do you work in Richie James and Kadarius Toney? Toney, 12 snaps is a little low for me. I mean, but obviously he's coming back and had the hip issue. So I get a little bit of maybe keeping his snaps down. I still don't know what the plan is for Richie James. It's second game back. If you want to say they're still working him back as well, I can get it. But I certainly would like to see more Richie James. And I don't know what it is about the Chiefs that, what it is that happens behind the scenes, whether it's in practice or elsewhere, that they continue to limit him. Because when I've seen Richie James on the field, going back to training camp, and he's looked good. So that one perplexes me a little bit.
Well, and you bring up MVS, and I think that makes a great point. Or you bring up Justin Watson when you're talking about being in the perfect spot. And that's something that MVS has struggled with consistently this year. You saw it again against the Packers. Deep pass down the field, and Mahomes throws it at the numbers, and MVS ends up, 5 yards inside the numbers, just completely out of position, not able to get to the pass. And, the route is supposed to be on the numbers. Well, if Justin Watson's running that route, he's going to be in the same place, or he's going to be, he's probably going to be a little shallow. He doesn't have the same speed, but he's going to be in the right spot. That's what's important. And that takes the safeties away from where it could open up things for other people. And I think that's really what you're missing at some points is, MVS runs into coverage, Sky Moore's run into coverage, and that creates problems.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a couple of things, and it feels like ways that the Chiefs receivers are kind of out of sync right now with the offense. And one of them is certainly, as far as just being on the same page with their quarterback and thinking the same way. Last week, Andy Reid brought out the Patrick Friendly term, and I love that because that's what I've been trying to figure out how to explain this for a couple of weeks now. And Andy Reid did it perfectly. It's not up to as much Patrick Mahomes on learning how all these receivers think. It's on each of those receivers to figure out how Patrick thinks. That's the way this works. So they're the ones that need to know and how he's going to respond to different coverages and the looks that he sees and where the ball's going to go. And then, receivers have just got to learn the signals and learn when they make changes, because right now, when the Chiefs are making changes at the line, it looks like they don't always know what they're doing and they're not on the same page. And that's a problem. So if they can figure out those two things, if they can, get on the same page as far as when they make adjustments, and these receivers, especially the guys other than, Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce, do fine with that, you get the other guys to figure it out more. And, you should be able to start hitting on some things. But I still bring it back to right now. I mean, until you work out and figure out the deep ball, take what the defense is giving you. And that's what the Chiefs did against the Raiders last week, and they didn't do it against the Packers.
Yeah, and there's been several times where they haven't done that. Even, we talked about before this show, Mahomes on the interception didn't take what the Packers were giving him. The run was right there. There was a running call that was played, and he passed the ball. And I'm not going to get into whose fault it was on that specific play, but when you change it from a run to a pass and then you see the running lane wide open, it becomes one of those things where you're sitting there going, yeah, that's probably something that needs to be looked at and it needs to be talked about. A lot more to talk about. We're going to talk about any changes that they could be making before Buffalo, probably get into a little bit more on some injury stuff that happened in the Packers game right after this. Are you looking for a meaningful holiday gift this season that your loved ones will actually use and enjoy? Whether it's shopping for your mom, your mother-in-law, your daughter, maybe your spouse, or different kids, aunts and uncles, lots of different people that you could be doing Christmas shopping for, and sometimes you never know what to get them. I want to talk to you about the Skylight Digital Picture Frame, which is the most personal and thoughtful gift that you can give, and it's extremely easy to personalize to the people that you want to give it to. Skylight is a touchscreen photo frame that you can send photos to straight from your phone, and they appear in seconds. You can even preload photos before the box is open, so when it's unwrapped and plugged in, your most treasured memories will appear. Satisfaction with the Skylight Digital Picture Frame is guaranteed. We're confident that you'll love Skylight. We offer a free 120-day return, and it is a very top-rated brand. Over 1 million happy customers, thousands of 5-star reviews, and available in over 30 countries. Recommended by the Today Show, Forbes, New York Mag, and many, many more. As a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. To get $15 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame, just go to skylightframe.com/lockedon. That's Skylight Frame, SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/lockedon. At this point, I have to ask you, Brian Cook, we did hear a response that he did not break his ankle. I don't think we have any real updates at this point other than it's not broken, and that hasn't been confirmed from the team. Is that correct?
Yeah, we got kind of a roundabout answer from Andy Reid on Monday during his presser, but I mean, he seemed to be kind of confirming the report from Jeremy Fowler and ESPN that that the X-rays were negative, that there wasn't a fracture in there. My understanding of it is that that Brian Cook has kind of a complicated ankle from a previous injury, and that actually the previous injury may have prevented this from being worse than it was.
That's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, it's certainly sounding like that this departure, his absence is maybe going to be measured in weeks, not months. And so that's great because right now, I mean, it seems like the Chiefs might get him back later this year.
Yeah, sounds like it possibly maybe for the playoffs, which would be perfect timing. Any update? I'm guessing I haven't seen anything, but any update on Drew Tranquil or Nick Bolton?
Not yet, but my understanding is that Nick Bolton's going to be ready to play this week. That they will, unless he has a setback of any sort, that's the plan, that he will play. Drew Tranquil, even if he does get clearance to come back, we'll see. I mean, if he's obviously, we'll see what stage of the concussion protocol he is in, later on Wednesday.
Yep.
I would expect, though, right now that I think you'll see Nick Bolton. I don't think you'll see Drew Tranquil.
And the key on Tranquil is if he's at least limited in practice, I think on Friday, then he has a chance to play. I think that would put him in the last stage of the concussion protocol, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the last step is doing football activities, and that's the only hard thing about getting in is by the end of the week, really the only thing that they can do is to get him through drills on Saturday during the walkthrough. So yeah, it's expedited, but yeah, by Friday I would say you have a pretty good idea about whether or not he's going to play.
So talking about Nick Bolton, you're going to have to make a roster move. I'm guessing that the roster move is probably going to be Brian Cook to IR. Would you think that would be the case?
That would be the easiest one for sure. They're also carrying an extra linebacker right now. So, yeah, I mean, not having Tranquil might make you want to keep Darius Harris around. That's the move I would guess would be coming eventually, since you just pretty much brought in Darius Harris to play special teams. And that's one of the things. I mean, he's there because Drew Tranquil isn't going to be on special teams either now. So,
Right.
Yeah, that might be the move for at least temporarily, was Brian Cook going to IR, because I do think he's going to be out at least 4 games. So that makes sense. But yeah, then I think there's probably going to be a secondary move at some point, and that would probably be with just getting, cutting back one of the linebackers, because I think they already have 6, I think, on the roster right now. So 7 would be definitely too many.
Yeah, and that's something that they don't normally do. Do you think that they're going to make any kind of moves? They brought in another DB or a safety for the practice squad. What do you know about him?
Yeah, Tyree Gillespie from Missouri. He was a 21.
There you go.
Yeah,
Missouri.
exactly. 20 MIZ baby. He was a 4th round pick in 2021. Hasn't been with the Chiefs before, but they're obviously fairly familiar with him because they did scout him at Mizzou. I believe he may have even come over here for the local pro day. I know the Chiefs had previous contact with him in the past and familiar with his game. He's still pretty young, for being 21. I mean, he's 21 draft. He's 25 years old. Doesn't have a ton of experience, but yeah, I mean, for just being an extra safety that you can have around, I think that's a good spot for him. He would be a special teams player as well, which, if Mike Edwards is going to be playing a lot more now, that's probably something that you want to consider, is having a guy for, you can have for special teams. So we'll see if he gets involved there, but he's definitely, from the practice squad standpoint, gives you some depth at that position.
Well, yeah, and you talk about exactly what I was thinking when they brought him in, is that he's a guy that can probably step in and be a guy they could bring up for 3 games. As a practice squad elevation, and use him because Edwards is going to be your starting safety for probably the next 4 or 5 weeks. So I think that's probably the direction they're going to be going. Do you see Kansas City really making any other changes heading into the Buffalo game?
I don't see anything. Nothing else that's on the radar. I will be interested to see how they do handle that safety position, because even though they're really pleased with Shamari Connor, and I think that they would be fine with giving him an expanded role, I would still think that Edwards is going to be the guy. So maybe this does get Shamari, some more snaps as a true safety, because really a lot of the work that he's been getting this year has been as really almost as a slot corner. They've been using a lot of their dime coverages. So, that's the one thing I want to see. Are they going to give maybe some of those snaps to Chamari, or will they, just bring up somebody else from the practice squad to back up and back Cook position and have a 4th safety on the field that would also play special teams too?
One of the things that's really stood out to me, and I'm trying to figure out why Kansas City has gotten away from it. I was expecting, at least going into training camp, and from what the reports out of training camp were that we were going to see a lot of, 3 tight end sets or even 2 tight end sets. And they haven't really been playing that as predominantly as I would expect. Do you think that's something that they're going to be looking at changing in the future? Because Noah Gray's snap count seem to be going down. And the other concern that I have with that is Travis Kelce played, I think, 60 of 68 snaps. If you want him healthy for playoffs, you cannot have him in there that much.
Yeah, that is a lot of work for Kelce. I noticed that too, because that was 88% of the snaps that he played the other night. That's more than I would want Travis Kelce playing. I think it's more.
Where would you want him? Sorry.
I really, right now, with Kelce making sure he's fresh for the playoffs, I wouldn't ever want him over more than 80% of the snaps. I mean, I think 70s max is where you'd like to be. And if it's a game that you're winning comfortably, I think you'd like to have him even lower than that. But yeah, I mean, but that's kind of, I think circles back to right now the trust between the quarterback and the guys that he's throwing the ball to. And he's got the most trust with Travis Kelce. And Travis, remember, I mean, by and large, the Chiefs let Travis kind of manage his own workload. They're not going to be taking Travis out of the game. They're going to kind of lean on him. Now, there's times when, they use, and they can control Travis's snaps by kind of using specific packages and going with different things that maybe he's not involved with, so they can get him off the field that way. But by and large, the Chiefs pretty much give carte blanche to Travis to, pull himself out of the game. And I think we saw it earlier this season. I think we even saw it last season, that he was more comfortable coming out and letting other guys, be in there, because I think there was more trust. Right now, I feel like that Travis, with the way things are going, he wants to be out there for Mahomes as much as he can. So I think this is more about Travis, trying to be out there. And, whether Andy's going to come to him, Tom Melvin, the tight ends coach, will, have a conversation about like, hey, Travis, we're still going to give you the right to take yourself out of the game, but we just want you to be a little bit more judicious with it, just to manage your own workload. Let's see. Because, yeah, I think you want Travis fresh. There's no doubt he's still dealing with the ill effects from the hyperextended knee. I don't think it was ever going to be 100% this season. I mean, that's just kind of the way football is. I mean, so let's see what happens. But I think that's the real catch-22 right now. I think he wants to be out there for Mahomes, and he's going to try and do everything he can to be out there for every play. And he's only going to take himself out when he thinks that he's really winded.
When you talked earlier about Rashee Rice getting the most snaps and getting the most targets at wide receiver, I completely agree with that. I think they need to do that. But the one thing that I thought was really interesting this past week, and obviously every play is different and every game is different, but Rice didn't get any third down attempts at all. To me, you can't do that. You have to try to force him the ball at least once or twice a game on third down, if not 3 times a game, to give him the opportunity to make plays for you. It's going to be up in the air whether or not he's on the field, because they're judicious with him taking him in and out. But I think that that's something that they need to look at going forward as well.
Yeah, that is really interesting. I mean, I hadn't thought about it from that standpoint, but it makes sense, because I mean, the Chiefs are definitely at least offensively for sure, are a veteran team on third down. I mean, they like to have their most experienced players out there and not necessarily have to put rookies in those situations. Now, it can be that, in a specific game, you just get a lot of third down situations that, whether they may be third and short, third and long, third and medium, that you're consistently getting in the same part of the play sheet, and that, maybe Rice hasn't prepped for that week, that maybe he wasn't, included in those packages. So, yeah, I mean, it may vary from one week to the next, but it's an excellent point, because I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, the Chiefs on third downs like to go with veterans, and you see it even in the run game when, the majority of the time it's still going to be even Clyde coming in on third down without McKinnon rather than Pacheco. I mean, there'll be some exceptions, but that's the way they favor things.
When we get back, we're going to be talking a lot more about this Buffalo game, looking ahead, and I actually have to ask you about McKinnon here in just a moment. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. With basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues. For example, LeBron James and Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy, so your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. Are you looking at maybe Jamar Chase for more than 75 yards this coming week, or Josh Allen for more than 2 passing touchdowns against Kansas City? Those are some of the bets you can make over at PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That is, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, overs and unders, and much, much more. In fact, as I'm looking at Buffalo versus Kansas City right now, lots of different items that you can go bet on. You can do, same game parlays. You can do correct score. You can look at, what is the first drive result? What's the money line bet? Who wins in the first half? Chiefs over or under on total points, Bills over or under in total points. Is there going to be an overtime? There are lots of different options at FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. You bring up a great point. Is Jerick McKinnon, do you think, back this week, or do you think they hold him out another week?
I would say it's about 50-50. I mean, it certainly seemed that way last week. They listed him as questionable, and then they made the decision on Saturday to pull him out. That's at least a little bit further down the road than it was last week when they ruled him out on Friday. I would say it's probably 50-50, as long as there's not a setback, that this could be the week that he comes back.
So what are you looking for going into this Buffalo game? Obviously, we kind of already talked about it a little bit, that Buffalo is going to be – this is a must-win game for them. I'm not saying Kansas City shouldn't treat this as a must-win. Obviously, if they want the number one seed, this has to be a must-win game. In my opinion, I don't think that they have the ability to take any games off the rest of the season. If they drop another one, the chances of getting the one seed, I think, probably go down to 25-30%, because then you're going to have Buffalo and Miami lose 2 games, not just one, which it's possible. I wouldn't call it probable.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is that this is a tough one because, with Joe Brady taking over as the offensive coordinator there, you still don't have a lot of film on what this Bills offense looks like. I mean, all you can really do is bank on the last couple of games, and they've scored 66 points in the last 2 games against the Jets and the Eagles, had a really good game against Philadelphia. I mean, that's worrisome. I mean, at least there you've got a common opponent that you can kind of see and glean a little bit from it. But, really, I mean, when it comes to Buffalo, by and large, I mean, you're throwing out most of the season of film. I mean, you're really only going to be looking at the last couple of weeks, and Joe Brady can still have a lot of, tweaks that he wants to put in there. Now, the other great thing is that he's been around a while. So Andy Reid's Steve Spagnuolo, they're familiar with his style. So, that should at least give him a little bit of institutional knowledge on what to expect from this Buffalo team. But, the other thing about this group is that, Buffalo's offense is going to be fine if Josh Allen doesn't make mistakes, if he doesn't take too many sacks, if he doesn't hold on to the ball too long, if he's not throwing into dangerous situations and turnovers. And since the change at offensive coordinator, I mean, he's looked a little bit more like the old Josh Allen. So that's the concern. I mean, that's what you got to watch for. And to me, I mean, it's going to be, you have to do what you didn't do against Green Bay. You got to be able to get, wins on first and second down defensively so that you can put Josh Allen in 3rd and long. And that way you can go after him with that pass rush. I mean, that's how the Chiefs are going to thrive. So if their game plan has to be that simple. Now, how you do it will be a little bit more complicated, but this is the game. I mean, you cannot let Josh Allen beat you with whether it's his arms or his legs. But right now, I mean, as Josh Allen goes, so go the Buffalo Bills.
Well, and one of the interesting things, and I think I saw that you were the one tweeting this out during the game against the Packers. Didn't the Packers go away and not really target any of the Chiefs' corners for the first part of the game? And then immediately after you said that, they targeted a Chiefs corner. If I'm correct on that memory.
Yeah, I think that was. I think I said that. Then right after that, Trent McDuffie gave up the touchdown. But
she slipped on.
And that's, and part of it is, when the Chiefs are when they're in man defense, I mean, that's the thing I think you are absolutely going to see teams continue to go to is throwing away from McDuffie and Snead and going towards anybody else. Now that means they're probably going to be throwing to a lot of tight ends and hey, frankly, they're going to probably be targeting their third and fourth receivers. Now Buffalo will be a little bit more because they're going to throw to Stephon Diggs no matter whether or not L'Jarius Sneed's on him or not, which I'd expect that's where L'Jarius would be.
I think he's going to travel with him, and that's going to be interesting because Snead has been fantastic against number ones this year when he's traveled.
Yeah, he really has. I mean, and so I would expect, that to be the matchup again this week for him. And if that's the case, I mean, Buffalo, like I said, they're still going to take some shots at Diggs, but if they watch and learn from Green Bay, I mean, they will absolutely say, hey, let's tackle these linebackers. Let's go after these safeties, especially because you're not going to have Brian Cook. Nick Bolton's going to be back, but maybe, is he going to have a little bit of rust? And he's not Drew Tranquil. I mean, I'd say Tranquil is a better pass defender right now than Nick Bolton is. So you got some holes there that you can attack. And I'll also interested just to see if Buffalo steals some of the other concepts that the Packers used as far as kind of getting their receivers out on the edge and getting the ball out to them quickly. Using some sweeps and motions to kind of change directions on the field and really attack that defense horizontally more than vertically.
Well, one of the things we talked about after the game was how the linebacker group kind of struggled with that, and probably Cochran as well. I do think that having Bolton back on the field is going to be a huge boon in that aspect. So I do think that's going to help them. But the other thing I like going up against Buffalo is they don't have a guy like A.J. Dillon, or at least not to the extent of A.J. Dillon. Cook is a good running back, but he's not a power back. He's more speed than power. Latavius Murray is not a power back by A.J. Dillon's standards. So I think that you have to feel a little bit better about that going into this game.
The only thing that concerns me about Cook really is his ability to get out to the edge. And, the Buffalo throws in some outside zone and some toss plays. That's where I would be concerned about Cook, him being able to use his speed on the edge, because that's where the Chiefs got kind of beat a little bit last week. And, and we'll see. I mean, the Chiefs also, I felt like that in some key moments, they played some zone last week that didn't work out for them. This is more of a man team. So with Buffalo, maybe they will go back to more of their roots, and you'll see a little bit more man coverage this week. And if that, and maybe that will shore up some of the defensive woes, because, if you've got L'Jarius Sneed and Trent McDuffie playing in man, and, I think that, to me, I think is an easier situation for them to be able to then convert to run defense than if you've got them in zone and they're looking out for other things. And we saw Snead make a couple of great tackles coming off the zone because he is so quick and he can pop out there. But, the way that the Packers were able to really own the outside edge, we'll see if Buffalo can do the same thing, but I would try to replicate it if I were them.
Well, the big question with Cook is he going to put it on the ground? Because he's done that multiple times this year. That's been a big fault of his. Josh Allen's put the ball on the ground as well. Obviously, he's thrown interceptions as well. So that's going to be something to watch going into this game. Last question. Do you have a feel for where your prediction is going into this week?
Yeah, I've said this earlier this season, and then it kind of got proven incorrect. But I just bank on the idea that Patrick Mahomes is not going to have too many stinker games in a row. And maybe Green Bay wasn't exactly a stinker because he's had worse performances, but it was below his expectations. It was below his average.
210 yards and an interception and a touchdown. Yeah,
it's not typical Mahomes. And yes, he can have some back-to-back games like that, but I just think that he's going to bounce back. If we see the Chiefs offense from a play calling standpoint, a scheme standpoint that was closer to what we saw against the Raiders, I think that they can get things going. Buffalo has got a lot of injuries on defense. They can give up some points. So there's an opportunity there for this offense to get itself right. And even though the Chiefs defense has had probably their two roughest games of the year back to back, I think there's a reason to be concerned that maybe some teams are starting to figure out some things on film and the injuries are reaching a critical mass. Maybe the Nick Bolton return will help out with that. But this defense, I think, needs to get well. And no better way to get well than if you can create some turnovers against this Buffalo offense.
That's what we got to hope for. And Ryan will be back talking to Joe Marino of Locked On Bills tomorrow to talk about this game. And then he and I will be back to give you our preview on Friday. Matt, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming on. Go check out Matt's stuff at Chiefs Digest. We really do appreciate you listening. And we will talk to you tomorrow.